What's up, people? So, today I'm going to talk to you about bias, what it means, because it's a huge part of our life, whether we like it or not, and it affects our decisions, our way of thinking, what we do, what we don't do, knowingly and unknowingly. So, bias is actually the inclination or prejudice for or against a person, a group, or idea. Like, I favor a particular person for whatever reason, or a group, or I'm always against a particular person or a group or an idea for whatever reason. And then right or wrong doesn't come into the picture. It's just a bias. It's just like soft spot for this side and always against the other side or other person. That is the general meaning of bias. So I'll be explaining the brief meaning of the 12 main types of biases. These are the ones that we usually experience in our lives. So a dozen biases explained for you. So let's go. So the first type of bias is affinity bias. Now, what does this mean? Affinity bias is we always take a liking to some person for whatever reason who shares similar qualities or behavioral aspects with us or likes and dislikes. So we have a soft spot for this person, and then we always favor this person or agree to the views of this person over others, not necessarily whether they are right or wrong. So that is called affinity bias. Then the second type is attribution bias. Now, under attribution bias, we basically understand and make sense of our own or others' actions. So, what this means is people constantly make attributions, judgments, or assumptions about why other people behave in certain ways. Okay, it's all assumptions. And these necessarily are not correct or accurate, and they affect our decision making. So, why a person has done something, I may not know the real reason, but I just agree with it and I make assumptions. And then based on that, it affects my decision making further, whether related or not related. So that is attribution bias. This one is interesting. Beauty bias, as the name is self explanatory, this is when we prefer or favor or contrastingly we dislike or oppose a person we perceive to be beautiful or good looking or someone not so good looking simply based on their appearance. Like, for example, A always sides with B over C just because A thinks B looks better, is more good looking, has a better, what do you say, appearance and personality. So we agree with that person more often than not over others simply based on that person's looks. That is called beauty bias. The next one is conformity bias. This is embedded in human nature. All humans want to be accepted by others. This is the universal truth. So, when we want to be accepted in a social group, we tend to agree with the views of the majority of the people in that group, or we tend to agree with the views of that group as a whole, whether they are right or wrong. So, basically, right or wrong over here is not given any importance. It's just that we, for example, take in politics. If I'm supporting the left or I'm supporting the right, say I'm supporting the left, then whatever they say, whatever they do, whatever actions they take, I will perceive them as the correct thing, the correct actions or views without reasoning and without thinking whether they're right or wrong. And I want to be part of that group and show myself as supporting that group. So that is conformity bias. The next one is confirmation bias. In confirmation bias, we look to give, we look for or we give greater weight to evidence that aligns or confirms with our own views and experiences. So, what this can lead to is selective observation and us not seeing or valuing evidence that contradicts our belief. Like this may be true for religion. Like if I follow a particular faith, then whatever that faith says or follows is the truth for me. And whatever is said in another faith that contradicts our views is false. Same thing can be at work or in your life also. You'll, even if you're among a group of friends or colleagues, and those whose beliefs align with yours, you have a bias towards them. And those who, whether they're right or wrong, is a different matter, who do not align with your views, you'll always have a bias against them. So that is confirmation bias. You're like confirming yourself only that okay, I am right, and this group is has close as views that are close to mine, and this group is always right. So you want to justify that your actions and your views are also right. Gender bias, again, as the name explains, is we always favor a particular gender. So we have a preference for a particular gender, and this is mostly based on stereotypes or old beliefs about gender roles. So, for example, a person might always think that men should get paid higher than women. That's a gender bias. Now, that is not always true. It depends on the role, it depends on what the job is. But no, I have a gender bias, or men are always right. Or if you go down the feminism part, then females think that women are always right or women are clever and that sort of thing. So that is gender bias. The halo effect bias is when we introduce bias into our decision making, when we only focus on one great feature or aspect about an individual and ignore everything else. Like, suppose I see someone as really smart or good looking, or basically you envy that person or you want to emulate that person, then you always have a bias favoring that person towards that person, even though that person might have many other bad qualities. So it's like a halo effect over one good aspect and ignoring everything else. That is the halo effect bias. Contrast effect bias, this is when we compare people rather than assessing them individually on their own merits. Like I always compare this guy has more money than this guy, but it might be that the guy with less money is a better person, has good character. So comparison. This is mainly comparison. We want to see the contrast between two people, and we compare them, but we don't see them as two different individuals who have both good and bad in them individually. So this is the contrast effect bias. Ageism bias, again, as the name explains, when people are discriminated against because of their age. This mostly is the case in the job market where people of a higher age are not considered for a role regardless of their experience, their skills, or anything else. So simple. This one is simple. This is ageism bias. Name bias again explains itself when people are discriminated against or favored because of their name. Like this person has this name, okay, from this community or this part of the world, so they are either favored or discriminated against solely based on their name, not looking at anything else, how good or bad the person is, what qualities the person has, what good or bad the person has done, nothing. Just based on a name, we have a bias. This one is interesting. Availability bias is how a person subconsciously or knowingly spends their money depending on how they've earned that money. So, like, say for example, this month I've earned 50,000. Now, in the first half of the month, I earned 20,000 from one project, and it was an easy project, nothing difficult. So I tend to spend that 20,000 more easily and maybe on things that I really don't need because I've got that money easily. And so I think it's easy money and I spend it faster. Then the second half of a month, I get 30,000 from another project which I had to work my ass off for. It was really difficult. That money we value more and we spend it wisely and not so easily because that money was difficult to get. So that not only the case of money for anything, like if I go and buy 10 chocolates, I might give them to kids or to family who really deserve them. But if someone just gives me 10 chocolates and then I'll just distribute them because I've not earned them myself. So that is known as availability bias. And the last one, equally interesting, is self attribution bias. Self attribution bias is when when something goes right or when we succeed in something, we take credit for it. Like if I crack an exam, yeah, I studied well, I my hard work, and I used my brains. Or when you do well in a project or in life in general, when something succeeds or goes well, we take all the credit for it. And on the other hand, if something fails or something doesn't work out according to plan, then we always start blaming other people for it or circumstances or anything except ourselves. Everything else was to be blamed. That's why this didn't work out. So we self attribute, like when things are good, when things go right, I am the reason for it. When something goes wrong, it was the circumstance or it was someone else who poked their nose in the middle, and that's why this didn't go according to plan or it failed. So that is self attribution bias. So these were the a dozen different biases that mostly affect us in our daily life. So keep them in mind, and maybe you can be a better person. And I hope you enjoyed this video. So please comment, like, share, and I'll be back soon with something more interesting. So till then, ciao, take care.